Hello and welcome to the World War Lab channel. Today we dive into a moment when arrogance, ideology, and blind faith in old assumptions collided with an industrial force that would reshape the course of the Second World War. May 28, 1940. Inside the Reich Air Ministry in Berlin, Reich Marshal Hermann Göring placed an intelligence report on his desk and read it with barely concealed contempt. The document described President Franklin D. Roosevelt's request to Congress for an unprecedented expansion of American aircraft production, a proposal to build an astonishing 50,000 airplanes every year. Göring scoffed openly as he addressed the staff. The Americans must be desperate, he said, if they think such propaganda could frighten Germany. They clearly knew nothing about real war production. Let them try converting their automobile factories, he mocked. They would soon discover that building combat aircraft required far more than simple assembly lines. What Göring failed to understand was that in Detroit, a Danish immigrant named William Knudsen was already proving him wrong. The former president of General Motors, now serving for the symbolic salary of $1 a year as Roosevelt's chief of production, was coordinating what would become the most ambitious industrial transformation in human history. Within just 4 years, American factories would not only surpass the supposedly impossible target of 50,000 aircraft annually, they would nearly double it, approaching 100,000 planes per year, while at the same time supplying 2 massive theaters of war separated by entire oceans. The statement that triggered such German scorn had been delivered on May 16, 1940, as German panzers tore through France. Standing before Congress, Roosevelt declared, "I should like to see this nation geared up to the ability to turn out at least 50,000 planes a year." The reaction was skepticism, even among America's allies. Only a year earlier, in 1939, the United States had produced just 3,611 military aircraft. The Army Air Corps possessed roughly 1,700 combat planes, many of them already obsolete. Yet Roosevelt was now demanding a 14-fold increase in production. William Knudsen became the architect of this industrial miracle. When asked who could possibly achieve such an impossible target, Presidential Advisor Bernard Baruch replied without hesitation. First, Bill Knudsen. Second, Bill Knudsen. Third, Bill Knudsen. Knudsen had abandoned a personal salary of $300,000 a year to serve his adopted nation. He brought with him the principles of automotive mass production and applied them to the world of aircraft manufacturing. The transformation began almost immediately. By December 1941, American factories were producing 2,000 military aircraft every month, a 20-fold increase compared to just 2 years earlier. The Ford Motor Company announced plans to build a massive bomber plant at Willow Run, Michigan. Boeing expanded its facilities in Seattle. Douglas Aircraft hired thousands of new workers. Across the nation, the arsenal of democracy was awakening. The Nazi leadership's dismissal of American potential was rooted in a combination of racial prejudice and deliberate blindness. General Friedrich von Boeticher, the German military attaché in Washington from 1933 to 1941, sent detailed and accurate reports describing the rapid mobilization of American industry. In December 1940, he warned Berlin that American war production would reach unimaginable heights. His warnings were ignored and dismissed as defeatist exaggerations. When von Boeticher met Adolf Hitler in February 1939 to discuss America's industrial capabilities, the Führer responded not with analysis, but with ideological rants. Hitler spoke obsessively about what he called American racial degeneration instead of listening to intelligence assessments. He proclaimed Americans to be half Judaized, half negrified, and therefore incapable of sustaining a serious, long-term war effort. This ideological blindness would later prove fatal. Such prejudice infected every level of Nazi leadership. Luftwaffe intelligence dismissed reports of women entering aircraft factories as evidence of American desperation rather than strength. They could not imagine that a democratic society could mobilize more effectively than a totalitarian one. When reports arrived claiming that American factories were operating around the clock in 3 shifts, German analysts assumed these figures were wildly exaggerated. The Nazi worldview simply could not accept the reality unfolding in the United States. And nowhere was that reality more clearly embodied than at Ford's Willow Run plant. Construction began on farmland on April 18, 1941. It would become the largest factory in the world under a single roof, covering 3.5 million square feet, with an assembly line stretching more than 1 mile in length. Charles Sorensen, Ford's chief of production, boldly promised that the plant would eventually produce one B-24 Liberator bomber every hour, at a time when other factories were struggling to build just one per day. The early results, however, were disastrous. The first bomber, completed in September 1942, had to be completely rebuilt. Quality control failures reached as high as 50%. By February 1943, Willow Run was producing only 56 bombers per month, far below the promised hundreds. Critics mocked the factory with the nickname, "Will it run?" Yet Ford engineers refused to give up. They broke the B-24's massive complexity, with its 488,193 individual parts, into manageable subassemblies. They developed hydraulic riveting tools, introduced prefabricated wiring harnesses, and implemented true moving assembly lines for aircraft construction. Even while dealing with 578 design changes in 1943 alone, they managed to keep production moving forward. By September 1943, monthly production had climbed to 148 bombers. By December, it reached 365. The true breakthrough came in April 1944, when Willow Run produced 428 B-24s in a single month, one bomber every 63 minutes, operating 24 hours a day. This single factory was now outproducing the entire German aviation industry. German pilots first began to grasp the scale of American industrial superiority during the fighting in Tunisia. Major Johannes Steinhoff, commanding JG-77, observed in December 1942, "The American pilots are no longer amateurs. Most disturbing of all, there are more of them every day." That realization only deepened as 1943 unfolded. On January 27th came the first American bombing raid against Germany itself, when 64 bombers struck targets at Wilhelmshaven. By October, during what became known as Black Thursday over Schweinfurt, the Americans lost 60 B-17s in a single mission and were able to replace them within just 2 weeks. The mathematics of the air war had become brutally clear. During Big Week, from February 20th to 25th, 1944, the U.S. 8th and 15th Air Forces launched approximately 3,500 bomber sorties against German aircraft production facilities. The Luftwaffe lost between 262 and 355 fighters, but more devastating than the aircraft losses was the death of around 100 veteran pilots who could never be replaced. General Adolf Galland reported to Göring that Germany was losing roughly 1,200 fighters each month, while producing only 1,000. At the same time, America was producing 2,500 fighters per month, while losing only about 400. Major Heinz Bahr, one of Germany's greatest aces with 220 aerial victories, described a mission over Brunswick in January 1944. He recalled that the bomber stream stretched from horizon to horizon, at least 700 flying fortresses and liberators filling the sky. "We were 8 fighters against hundreds," he said. It was hopeless. By 1944, American aircraft production had reached staggering proportions. In that year alone, U.S. factories produced 96,270 aircraft. This included 16,048 four-engine bombers, 35,743 fighters, and 22,591 multi-engine aircraft. That single year of American output exceeded Germany's total wartime production, which amounted to approximately 94,677 aircraft. The imbalance went far beyond sheer numbers. Each American bomber carried 13.50 caliber machine guns, each with thousands of rounds of ammunition. German fighters, by contrast, were increasingly sent into combat with partial ammunition loads because supplies were so scarce. American bombers were equipped with powered turrets, advanced bomb sighting systems, and sophisticated navigation equipment, while German fighters often flew without even functioning radios. By May 1944, Boeing's Seattle Plant 2 was producing 16 B-17 bombers every single day. Douglas Aircraft, which had employed just 68 people in 1936, now had 167,000 workers spread across 9 massive facilities. North American Aviation was turning out 500 P-51 Mustang fighters every month. Lockheed achieved production rate of 1 P-38 Lightning every 90 minutes, even while implementing 2,127 combat-driven design modifications. The supporting industries kept pace. General Motors produced 57,658 aircraft engines under license. Packard built 55,523 Rolls-Royce Merlin engines. Alcoa increased aluminum output by 600%. Dow Chemical expanded magnesium production from just 6 million pounds annually to an astonishing 333 million pounds. The transformation of the American workforce shattered every Nazi assumption. In 1941, women made up less than 1% of aircraft industry workers. By 1943, they represented 65%, totaling around 310,000 women. At Douglas's Long Beach plant, 22,238 of the 41,642 employees were women. Rose Monroe, the original Rosie the Riveter, drove 3,000 rivets per shift at Willow Run with an accuracy rate of 99.5%. At Douglas, female inspectors reduced defect rates from 3.2% to just 0.3%. Ford redesigned tools to better fit smaller hands, and in doing so, accidentally improved overall efficiency. Lighter pneumatic tools reduced fatigue, and better positioned workstations lowered injury rates. German intelligence misread all of this. Reports of women working in aircraft factories were interpreted as proof of American desperation. A captured Luftwaffe report dismissed female workers as a temporary measure and predicted a collapse in quality. Instead, quality improved. Women excelled in tasks requiring precision, wiring, instrument installation, and inspection. Their integration into the workforce represented democratic strength, not weakness. As American production surged forward, Germany retreated deeper into fantasy. In February 1944, Göring authorized a Jaeger program, which dispersed aircraft production into 729 underground facilities using slave labor. The middle work complex alone employed around 60,000 prisoners under horrific conditions, with approximately 20,000 dying from starvation, disease, and abuse. These underground factories produced more defects than functional aircraft. Enslaved workers sabotaged components whenever possible. Transportation between scattered sites caused endless delays. Quality control collapsed. In total, the entire middlework complex produced fewer engines per month than Ford's single-engine plant in Chicago. Meanwhile, American innovation accelerated. Boeing developed modular construction for the B-29 Superfortress, spreading production across 4 separate facilities with completely interchangeable parts. The pressurized B-29, costing $65,000 each, incorporated technology Germany could barely match even at the prototype level. By early 1945, the United States was producing 100 B-29 bombers every month. June 6, 1944, revealed the full culmination of American industrial power. The D-Day invasion was supported by 11,590 Allied aircraft, while the Germans managed only 319 sorties, giving the Allies a crushing 36-1 advantage. This was no longer a matter of tactical superiority. It was industrial annihilation. Between January and May 1944, the preparatory bombing alone dropped 145,000 tons of explosives on German targets, exceeding the total tonnage Germany had dropped on Britain throughout the entire war. Transport aircraft delivered 3 full airborne divisions in a single day, using more planes than Germany's entire transport fleet had ever possessed at any point in the conflict. By December 1944, individual bombing raids regularly involved 1,200 heavy bombers, escorted by 900 fighters. The P-51 Mustang symbolized the final collapse of German air power. It had the range to reach as far as Poland, the performance to match or surpass any enemy fighter, and it existed in such overwhelming numbers that losses no longer mattered. German pilots bitterly nicknamed them Indians because they seemed to swarm everywhere at once, appearing from all directions simultaneously. As defeat drew closer, even the Nazi leadership could no longer deny the catastrophe of production. In December 1944, Joseph Goebbels wrote in his diary, "Göring's promises of Luftwaffe superiority now seem like criminal delusions. We are fighting the world's greatest industrial power with nothing but rhetoric." Rommel had warned his staff before D-Day, "The Americans can lose 10 tanks for every one we destroy and still overwhelm us. When they land, they will come with such material superiority that no position can hold." Even Hitler himself admitted to Speer in January 1945, "We should have listened to von Boeticher's reports. Their industrial potential was decisive. While we built in hundreds, they built in tens of thousands." Albert Speer later testified that American bombing had reduced German production by 35% for tanks, 31% for aircraft, and 42% for trucks. He stated unequivocally that the systematic American assault on industrial targets had caused a breakdown of German armaments production. Germany's Me-262 jet fighter, which became operational in mid-1944, represented a genuine technological breakthrough. It was over 100 miles per hour faster than any Allied fighter. Hitler and Göring believed this wonder weapon could restore air superiority despite Germany's overwhelming numerical inferiority. But Germany produced only about 1,430 Me-262s in total, and never had more than 200 operational at the same time. The engines required major overhauls every 10 hours of flight. Critical materials were unavailable, forcing the use of inferior substitutes that further reduced reliability. America, meanwhile, had begun jet development as early as 1942. Although the Bell P-59 proved inferior to German designs, Lockheed's P-80 Shooting Star, superior to any German jet, entered production before the war ended. American industrial depth allowed the United States to pursue multiple advanced technologies simultaneously, a luxury Germany could no longer afford. The contrast defined the outcome of production war. Germany's technological brilliance in jet development meant nothing against America's ability to build tens of thousands of conventional fighters while simultaneously developing the next generation of aircraft. Quality without quantity proved worthless in total war. Hermann Göring's arrest on May 8, 1945, by element of the U.S. 36th Infantry Division marked the beginning of his forced confrontation with reality. Initially defiant at the interrogation facility in Augsburg, he insisted that German technology had been superior and that Germany had been defeated only by sheer numbers. After his transfer to Camp Ashcan in Luxembourg, the Special Detention Center for high-ranking Nazi prisoners, the tone began to change. In July 1945, Major Kenneth Heckler conducted extensive interviews that documented Göring's gradual recognition of American industrial dominance. "I knew American industrial potential was great," Göring admitted, "but its execution exceeded my worst fears. That single factory at Willow Run produced more aircraft than our entire bomber force at its peak. It was incomprehensible." He expressed particular astonishment at American logistics. "Your ability to supply forces across 2 oceans while maintaining domestic production. This was beyond our conception. We could not adequately supply forces 500 miles from Germany. You supplied armies 5,000 miles from America." During his trial at Nuremberg, prosecutors confronted Göring with overwhelming evidence of American production superiority. Charts demonstrated that by 1944, the United States was producing more aircraft in a single month than Germany managed in an entire year. Films of Willow Run's assembly lines were shown in the courtroom, while prosecutors listed German cities destroyed by bombers that had rolled out of that one factory. Göring's testimony on March 14, 1946 revealed his continued struggle to comprehend the scale of it all. "I believe the economic and technical potential of the United States to be unusually great, especially in aviation. But I never imagined they could increase aircraft production 100-fold in 4 years. Such growth seemed physically impossible." Prison psychologist G.M. Gilbert recorded Göring's obsession with production statistics. He repeatedly calculated ratios, comparing individual American factories to Germany's total industrial output. He seemed especially fixated on Willow Run, referring to it as that damn factory that broke our backs. When shown that America had produced 812,615 aircraft engines compared to Germany's 241,675, Göring simply stared at the numbers in silence. The mathematical reality of defeat was undeniable. Even today, the scale of that transformation remains staggering. From producing only 3,611 military aircraft in 1940, the United States went on to build 295,959 by the end of the war, 97,810 bombers, 99,465 fighters, and 98,684 aircraft of other types. This was not merely a triumph of quantity, but proof of systemic superiority in every aspect of production. At its peak, nearly 2 million Americans worked in aircraft manufacturing. The workforce reflected an unprecedented diversity: women, African Americans, Mexican Americans, Native Americans, disabled workers, teenagers, and elderly citizens. This democratic mobilization achieved what totalitarian command could not. Voluntary cooperation outperformed forced labor by every measurable standard. The workers who entered factories in 1941, knowing nothing about aviation, emerged in 1945 as the most skilled aircraft workforce in the world. They did not just build airplanes, they transformed manufacturing itself. Statistical quality control methods developed for bomber production became standard industrial practice worldwide. Automation principles pioneered at Willow Run reshaped global manufacturing. The engineers who designed bomber assembly lines would later help design the Saturn V rocket. The women who riveted B-24s would raise children who eventually walked on the moon. The production miracle did not end with victory. It launched what became known as the American century. The financial scale of this effort defied all economic orthodoxy. Aircraft production alone consumed $45 billion in 1940s dollars, the equivalent of roughly $800 billion today. The B-29 program by itself cost more than the Manhattan Project. Yet instead of bankrupting the nation, war production created unprecedented prosperity. Unemployment, which had haunted the years of the Great Depression, vanished entirely. Personal income doubled between 1940 and 1945. War bonds, purchased by workers themselves, financed much of the expansion. At Willow Run alone, workers bought $45 million in bonds, effectively funding their own factory's operation. Germany, by contrast, devoted 40% of its entire industrial capacity to aircraft production by 1944, yet still produced less than half of America's output. Slave labor, on which Germany increasingly relied, proved catastrophically counterproductive. Sabotage was widespread. Quality collapsed. Productivity per German worker actually declined after 1943, while American productivity increased by 300%. The industrial infrastructure created for war became the foundation of post-war prosperity. Aluminum smelters built for bomber production supplied material for suburban housing. Chemical plants that produced aviation fuel gave rise to plastics for consumer goods. Machine tool factories that equipped aircraft plants retooled American industry for global economic dominance. Beyond raw output lay extraordinary organizational excellence. The War Production Board coordinated 184,000 companies into a single functioning system. IBM punch card machines tracked millions of components across thousands of suppliers. MIT's radiation laboratory, employing 4,000 scientists, developed navigation systems that gave American bombers all-weather capability. When combat revealed the B-17's vulnerability to frontal attacks, Boeing added chin turrets within 60 days. When Pacific operations demanded longer range, Consolidated modified the B-24 without halting production. German modifications took months or years. American improvements took weeks. This adaptability proved just as decisive as sheer production volume. American aircraft evolved continuously based on real combat experience. Information from battles in the Pacific reached factories, producing planes for Europe within days. German aircraft, built in isolated underground facilities by slave labor, remained largely static, while American designs improved almost weekly. The feedback loop between combat and production reached unprecedented efficiency. Pilots' observations went directly to engineers. Engineer solutions reached assembly lines within days. Assembly line workers' suggestions went straight back to designers. This democratic flow of information proved superior to Germany's rigid hierarchical command system. On October 15, 1946, only hours before his scheduled execution, Hermann Göring wrote his final letter. In it, he made his most complete admission of the true meaning of the production war. The Americans won through industrial power, not military prowess. We were not defeated by better soldiers, but by better factories. The nation we dismissed as capable only of building consumer goods buried the Wehrmacht under aluminum and steel. His final recorded statement to GM Gilbert was just as revealing. We declared war on an industrial giant while it slept. When it awoke, we were doomed. They did not merely outproduce us. They transformed production itself. Every aspect of their system proved superior to ours. Göring took his own life that night, but his final words stand as history's verdict on the production war. The Reich Marshal, who had once mocked American industrial capacity, died knowing that a single American factory had surpassed the lifetime output of his entire Air Force. Military historians now regard the American production achievement as the decisive factor in Allied victory. Without the overwhelming material superiority it created, the D-Day invasion would have been impossible, the bombing campaign unsustainable, and the war in the Pacific unwinnable. Richard Overy, the leading historian of the Air War, concluded the outcome was determined not by fighting spirit or tactical brilliance, but by the weight of material. The Allies won because they buried their enemies under an avalanche of production. The numbers support this absolutely. By 1944, the United States alone was producing more military aircraft than the rest of the world combined, Axis and Allied together. This was not incremental superiority. It was dominance by an entire order of magnitude. Germany was not facing defeat. It was facing obliteration. Yet, the significance of production miracle went far beyond military victory. It proved the superiority of democracy over dictatorship, freedom over tyranny, and voluntary cooperation over forced obedience. The workers who made this transformation possible were not slaves or conscripts. They were free citizens united by common purpose. Hermann Göring's dismissal of American production capacity stands as one of history's most catastrophic miscalculations. His contempt for democratic industrial power cost Germany the war and millions of lives. His failure to recognize America's true capabilities sealed the fate of the Third Reich long before the first bomber reached German skies. The transformation from producing just 3,000 aircraft a year to producing nearly 100,000 annually demonstrated that free societies, when confronted with existential threats, can achieve the impossible. American workers did not merely meet Roosevelt's seemingly impossible goal. They doubled it. They did not just match German production. They exceeded it fivefold while simultaneously fighting a massive war in the Pacific. Today's leaders would do well to remember Göring's mistake. To dismiss democratic nations as weak because they are peaceful, or to underestimate free people's productive capacity because they prefer prosperity to conquest, is to invite catastrophic miscalculation. In 1940, America appeared unprepared for war. By 1944, it had become an unstoppable industrial colossus. The arsenal of democracy proved that production lines could be as decisive as front lines, that assembly workers could be as vital as soldiers, and that industrial mobilization could determine victory as surely as military strategy. Göring learned this lesson too late, at the cost of his nation's destruction. From his scornful reaction to Roosevelt's announcement in May 1940 to his death at Nuremberg in October 1946, Hermann Göring's personal journey traced the arc of Nazi Germany's collapse. His contempt for American production became the epitaph of the Third Reich, a regime that confused ideology with capability, that mistook tyranny for strength, and that believed racial mythology could overcome industrial mathematics. The Reich Marshal who dismissed American aircraft production died, knowing that American factories had produced more planes in 1944 alone than Germany had managed throughout the entire war. His mockery of democratic industrial capacity became history's most expensive joke, paid for in the currency of total defeat. America produced 295,959 military aircraft. Germany produced 94,677. But the true victory was not found in numbers alone. It was found in method. It proved that free workers could outproduce slaves, that democratic cooperation could surpass totalitarian command, and that a nation of immigrants and diverse citizens could unite to achieve the impossible. The B-24 bombers rolling off Willow Run's assembly line every 63 minutes were not just machines of war. They were democracy's answer to tyranny. Each rivet was driven by a woman who had been a housewife only months earlier. Each engine was built by a teenager who had left school to serve. Each wing was assembled by workers who had fled poverty, discrimination, or hardship in search of opportunity. All of it proved that free people, when united by a just cause, could bury tyranny beneath an avalanche of production. Hermann Göring laughed at the idea of America producing 50,000 aircraft a year. America answered by producing twice that number and reshaping the course of history. His laughter echoes now as the sound of catastrophic miscalculation, the fatal dismissal of democracy's industrial power by a man who understood neither democracy nor production. In the end, both buried him and everything he represented beneath nearly 300,000 aircraft, turning his contempt into history's most complete and undeniable defeat.